Is it possible that we saw TJ Oshie in a Capitals jersey for the last time?
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen each and every day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. I would love to talk Capitals hockey with you one-on-one, and we can do that on subtext. Just check the show description for more details. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, it was breakdown day for Capitals players. And we got some interesting tidbits from some of the different players, some of the different coaches, the GM. And in tonight's episode, we'll talk about TJ Oshie's future. Is it possible that he played his last game? And what is the outlook for TJ Oshie? We'll talk about that a little bit later. We'll talk about Nick Backstrom, as we know that he stepped away from hockey indefinitely. But is there the remote possibility that he joins the Capitals in the fall? And then to close out the show, we will talk about a former Capitals head coach, Peter Laviolette, and what his thoughts were on the Capitals this last season. But just to get it going here, talking about TJ Oshie, and one of the things I'm going to talk about here right off the top with TJ Oshie is I've never seen more players, fellow teammates, come out and speak so well of one player ever. I've just never heard such praise heaped on one person than TJ Oshie. And I get that as someone that covers this team and watches the post-game pressers and just see how TJ Oshie carries himself. He's a likable guy. He's very positive. He's got a good sense of humor. And he is a good mentor for a lot of the younger Capitals players. And they came out and spoke very highly of him. Connor McMichael, Dylan Strome. This team loves TJ Oshie. So I think the hard part is the fact that he alluded to the fact that he might walk away from hockey if his issues with his back don't resolve themselves, or if he can't find proper treatment. That I'm getting the feeling that he doesn't want to keep going through this. It just seems like the back problems are getting the best of him, and that, he's not getting any younger, and he's got a wife, he's got kids. He does not want to keep putting himself through so much pain. But it was interesting to hear him talk, and a lot of the other Capitals players talk. He said, TJ Oshie said that it would be difficult to say that he's walking away from the game forever. He did say that he would like some type of guarantee that his back will be okay. And we're finding out more and more now that the season is over and the Capitals are out of the playoffs, the crazy things that TJ Oshie had to do to get himself ready for game activity, flying in his back specialist from Minnesota to get him ready to go. It's not like you just put the pads on and put the skates on and hit the ice. This is a TJ Oshie that has had a career in hockey and is quite banged up because of it. Chronic back pain is the biggest obstacle to TJ Oshie playing 100%. He said, in my mind, it would be hard for me to ever for sure say that I'm stepping away from the game. I'd love to play next year, but I will need to come back with somewhat of a guarantee that my back won't be going out, Oshie said. It's hard putting everyone through the situation, from my family at home to the team, trying to figure out a lineup of young guys getting called up and sent down. I'd like to just find an answer and fix the problem before I make another run at it. And it's interesting that they were talking about that on 32 Thoughts. If you're an everyday of the show, I spoke about that in yesterday's show as well, that Elliot Friedman said that TJ Oshie lingered on the ice when the last game of the playoffs was over, kind of when they're raising the stick to the fans out there, that he lingered out on the ice longer than the other players did. And kind of the thought there was that he was soaking it all in the event that he never plays again. Kind of a sad moment for me. And for TJ Oshie, I will ever remember what he means to this team, and to truly appreciate what kind of player he is something that you have to see in person. I was lucky enough to see him a handful of times in person. And quite a dynamic player, not necessarily always, a top tier goal scorer, even though he was in his earliest days with the Capitals and with the Blues before that, but a great playmaker, has a tremendous hockey IQ, and I think makes his teammates play better just by his leadership and the ability to kind of tell the younger guys that this is what you should be doing here and there. But for TJ Oshie, it takes a lot of preparation for Oshie to get up for games. He's got to meet with doctors because of lingering back issues. To make things worse, in the playoffs, he took a hard hit from Artemi Panarin. We do remember that. Some questioned if it was a clean hit or not. TJ Oshie did come out after the fact and said that he thought it was a clean hit, but I think that is just the competitive nature of TJ Oshie. I don't think that he would ever come out and cry foul. It's just not how he's wired. Oshie had to rush his doctor from Minnesota to get ready for game 3 and 4. To really rub salt in the wounds, Oshie was slammed into the boards by Matt Rempe, breaking his left hand. So Matt Rempe is already creating quite a reputation for himself, as we know what he did with Trevor Van Riemsdyk. We know that he backed away from a fight from Tom Wilson, and now breaking the hand of TJ Oshie. It's different than just being sore. A broken hand is like a hangnail compared to what I go through with my back, TJ Oshie said. He underwent a double ablation, which is just a temporary fix. My issue is there's not just one problem back there. There's multiple things that we've got to find an answer for. And this reminds me a lot of the whole Nick Backstrom situation, where we know that he stepped away from hockey after he had that hip resurfacing procedure. There was a lot of hope with him that he was going to be able to return and play 100%, and he had to step away from the game. For me, it almost seems like the Oshie situation is trending in that direction as well. But taking a look at it here, it's not just his play on the ice that's affected. It also affects his personal life. The pain is so bad in his back that he can't get up to use the bathroom sometimes. He says, if I'm in a state where I can play, I'm usually literally on the floor peeing in a water bottle. It sucks when that happens. I can't pick up my kids or do anything until I see Dr. Johnson out of Minnesota and he gets me all aligned. Then I seem to feel a lot better. But at what point is he going to want to stop getting put back together again, almost like a broken puzzle? At some point, he wants to maintain the lifestyle that he has. He has young children. He has a wife. Does he want to keep putting himself through such misery? He is handsomely paid. I don't think he is hurting financially. So I just think for him, it's for the love of the game. I mean, the money's a bonus, don't get me wrong, but I think that TJ Oshie is the ultimate competitor. I know he is. He has said as much. So it's got to be a tough moment for him to contemplate walking away from the game that he loves and that he's played so wonderfully for so many years. For Oshie, pain is nothing new and something he's had to power through many times in his career. There's been a lot of just extra things that I have to make sure that my back is ready to play an NHL game. I miss the days where I'd come in and have a coffee and sit on the training room table, maybe the hot tub, and throw the stuff on and go and play. But it has gotten much more difficult for TJ as time has gone on, as he is a guy that plays much bigger than he is. He is not afraid of taking on the biggest guy on the ice. He's just that competitive. And the perils of that is he has back issues and he has a lot of other issues, but primarily a back issue. I'd like to find just an answer and a fix to the problem before I make another run at it. So the big question is, and again, this is very similar to what we heard from Nick Backstrom. Maybe TJ Oshie will show up in camp, but I would not be too surprised if we saw him play his last full season. Kind of my projection for him is that he will enter into camp in the fall and he'll make a go of it. And then when his back flares up again, I think he will decide to walk away. If, Nick Backstrom is any example, that's what we saw from him. But a tough moment, and I will forever remember his many contributions if, in fact, it was his last time that he ever played. TJ says, I love the game, and I still love coming to rink every day. Obviously, there's some health things that I've got to follow up with trainer Jason Service and the doctors and go over some options, Oshie said. But I love the game. I still love coming here, so I'd still love to play next season. Of course he would, but he sees also as well is that the Capitals are headed in a different direction, a younger direction. And now that it's the postseason, I will go over in depth all of the breakdown videos of all the different players. We have a whole summer to talk about Capitals hockey and talk about their thoughts and what figures to be an interesting next season. But that is the direction that the Capitals are heading in. Brian McClellan said as much as this team is slowly trending in the direction of getting younger, kind of like with Nick Backstrom, how you saw him step away from hockey to not do a disservice to Connor McMichael, who was a guy that kind of took over his role at different spots during the year. Also Hendrik Lapierre, that I think that TJ Oshie also understands this team is getting younger and he doesn't want to stand in the way of progress. If he can come back 100% in the fall, I think he will. But just based on his history, I would find that highly unlikely. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about another injured Capital, Nick Backstrom, who decided to walk away from hockey indefinitely. Is there the chance that we see him in the fall? I'll discuss next. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're in speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed to Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of the NBA, which makes getting playoff tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets. So say you are a person that is going to one of the NBA final games, or say you're going to a Nationals game, and you didn't get tickets as fast as you would like, fear not, because tickets are often cheaper closer to tip-off or first pitch. So take the confusion out of buying tickets with Game Time. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets and NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices, guaranteed. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So Nick Backstrom, we know, stepped away from hockey last fall in a difficult moment that I think that some people saw coming because when he was playing for the Capitals in the fall, when he first joined the team in training camp, it did seem like things were going well. GM Brian McClellan said that he is showing improvement, but he did not get the performance that he was looking for. The hip resurfacing procedure that he had did not do what he needed to do to get him in a position where he can play games night in and night out in the National Hockey League. So he stepped away from hockey indefinitely. Is there the remote possibility that we see Nick Backstrom play hockey again? For me, Highly unlikely. But let's talk about him as a player. In 1,105 games played, he has 271 goals and 762 assists. I think it's a pretty safe thing to say that Alex Ovechkin would not be the player that he is today if it was not for a center like Nick Backstrom. The last season, he only played 8 games with 1 assist. Again, like I talked about in the first segment, I think these older players, they understand what it's to be young in the league because they were once young, and they don't want to stand in the way of progress. Much like how Nick Backstrom didn't want to step in the way of progress for Connor McMichael. We saw that with TJ Oshie, or we're seeing that happen with TJ Oshie. It puts these players in a difficult position, stepping away from a game that they've loved and excelled at the highest level. We know what Nick Backstrom stepped away from hockey November 1st, indefinitely after his hip resurfacing procedure didn't respond the way he had hoped. But what is the plan for him next season? Mac only said, "We'll see." He also went on later to say that the plan for him is probably to spend the last year of his contract on LTIR. No one is expecting Nick Backstrom to walk away from all that money, but it's an interesting position for the Capitals to be in. With Nick Backstrom's $9.2 million cap not counting against the Caps, they will have more money to spend on a top 6 forward or 2. So this team does want to get more scoring. That was evident out there. So some of these players that are not contributing based on injury or whatever the case is, that is going to open up some more flexibility. But a tough thing for Nick Backstrom, as he was clutch for so many years for the Capitals. I think we have more flexibility going forward here. We'll see what the market is. McClellan said, Ovi talked about how hard it was not having number 19 on the team. In training camp, you thought like, wow, we're going to have Kuzi, Backy, Stromer, 3 centers who can create something from nothing. But Backy take a step back because of his injury. It's always a business, and you always have to support the players, Ovi said. It was just a period of time where he tried to find the way to go, okay, what do I have to do to get better on the ice? What do I have to find in the game? And I think to a certain extent, he is just a little ways out. I think that, and they talked about this, and I'll talk about this in upcoming episodes, is that Brian McClellan alluded to the fact that we can't expect more, a whole lot more from Alex Ovechkin. He is just an older player. He is not the 21, 22, 30-year-old Alex Ovechkin. He is a guy on the wrong side of 30. And to expect the same kind of production that we saw from him in his younger day just isn't realistic. So that's the difficult part as the Capitals try to position themselves away from the core of players that gave them great success. And you remember, think of the 2018 TJ Oshie, who I talked about in this first segment, Nick Backstrom, who has been huge for the Capitals for years. And, at some point, Alex Ovechkin, these players that were so pivotal for this team for so many years are facing the tough questions about when to step away from the game they love. But for me, taking a look at it, it is a hard thing. I love Oshie, Backstrom, and Ovechkin and what they've meant to this team, but it is time to usher in the new age and the younger players. I think we will see a whole lot more of that. It's just kind of a bittersweet and a bit sad thing to see, Backstrom and potentially Oshie step away as you start to see this team that has been so successful for so many years slowly start to peel away and make that transition into getting younger. All right, so coming up here straight ahead, we will talk about former Capitals head coach Peter Laviolette. And the one thing I'll say about him is he is a guy that can say nothing but great things about a Capitals team that he was once the head coach of. Oftentimes there is bitterness, those kind of things. There is none of that evident with Lavi. Let's talk about him straight ahead. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying. Flag on the play. You already talked about this, but there is so much stuff going on with this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with your friends for time tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock, and there's so much more to get. Unlock unique stickers where you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels like exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges, a ton that include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot machine. And there's always new timed events to help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench and go to Monopoly and check it out on the Google Play or App Store. Game on. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Capitals made a big change last offseason when they made the switch from Peter Laviolette to Spencer Carberry. And oftentimes there's bitterness. You hear ill words spoke about former coaches, or the coach speaks poorly about the team that he used to be the head coach of. None of that is the case with Peter Laviolette. Quite the contrary, as a matter of fact, as he spoke very well of the team that his team took down in the playoffs, but he was most impressed with what the Capitals were able to accomplish given the injuries and the players that are on the active roster. And when I take a look back on Peter Laviolette, I don't have any really ill will towards him. I think that he kind of faced the same things that Spencer Carberry did. He did the best he could do with what he had. He didn't have the lineup that the New York Rangers have. And I think that ultimately that factored into why Peter Laviolette approached Brian McClellan and said, I want to step away from this team, is that he did not see the changes. He didn't see the roster that would be successful. Peter Laviolette wants to run a good hockey team with a good lineup, and he has the record of taking a lot of teams to the playoffs, and I think that he saw what he could do, and his time in Washington was over. But there are no bitter feelings that were evident from former head coach Peter Laviolette. The one thing I'll say about him is there doesn't seem to be any bad blood. The Capitals weren't his first team or the only team he coached. And I think that's part of it. And, Peter Laviolette talked about it as much. He said, I've coached a lot of different teams. I don't have any, ill will, or I don't have a whole lot of feelings about teams that I used to coach. I've been there. I've done that. And he, I think, reflected well on his time with the Capitals. He even said, I got a lot of respect for the Capitals, as he should. Spencer Carberry led this team to the playoffs. Quite an accomplishment considering the adversity this team faced and the fact that they were sellers at the deadline. So a bit of a tip of the hat to Spencer Carberry, as well, as he was able to accomplish something that many thought impossible, something that Peter Laviolette wasn't able to do his last year in Washington. That was take this team to the playoffs. Despite the fact that the Capitals got eliminated in 4 games, he did pull a rabbit out of his hand and squeezed the most juice he possibly could out of this aging core. You've got to give Washington a ton of credit because they went through a lot with their injuries and what was going on with them inside the room, the locker room, and the players that were leaving their lineup. Laviolette said they fought hard to get to the playoffs, and then they fought extremely hard inside of the playoffs. You've got to give them a lot of credit. And some people are pointing to the fact to highlight inside their room, inside the locker room. Maybe there are things that Peter Laviolette knows about the inner workings of the Capitals within the locker room that we all don't know. But many people pointed to the fact, and oftentimes Laviolette talked about things that happen inside the locker room. So a bit of an interesting message there, and maybe lends itself to why he wanted to step away from the Capitals. Lavi knows all the ins and outs of this team and what Carberry was able to do. You've got to give Washington a ton of credit. They did something that a lot of people didn't think was possible. I think when we look back at his time with the Capitals, he did what he could do with the tools he had. He also went out of his way to acknowledge the captain of the Capitals, Alex Ovechkin. And if you are a lip reader, it looked like he said, good job. So, a very a gracious Peter Laviolette. And, you take a look at it. I don't know if you would have had the same feeling if something crazy happened and the Capitals eliminated the Rangers in 4 games. But in any event, I think that Spencer Carberry is a decent guy. I do. I don't think anything ill will of him. I don't remember any real rifts between him and any of the players. And for the most part, it seems like the players on the Capitals spoke well of him. So that's a good thing. And that we need more leaders like of that inside the NHL that aren't, going to take a moment to stab their former team in the back or speak ill of them. That even though, things didn't necessarily go, perfectly with the Capitals. I think that, like I said, Peter Laviolette, I think, wanted a better lineup. He was willing to walk away, take the high road, and just speak glowingly of this team, and a tip of the hat for just a truly class act in Peter Laviolette. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are ultimately what makes this show successful. When you're done here, head on over to Locked On's 24/7 streaming channel available on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holney, and I'll talk to you again next time.